So sorry about that, everyone. Welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And we're we're going into the breach. We promise you on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember that you could join us in the chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, and that is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Joe and I do a fabulous interview show with interesting people on the Veritas Catholic Network on Sundays at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. To get that, you could listen live if you're in Connecticut, Westchester, or Northern Long Island, but you could download the app, Veritas Catholic Radio Network mobile app, and you'll have access to all of their content. They are an EWTN affiliate. Joe and I are very honored to be on there, and wherever you find us on social media, YouTube, Facebook, we're on Rumble. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And of course, if you want to support Joe and I, and you want to throw in a few bucks, you could find us on Patreon at patreon.com/the Frontline with Joe and Joe. So Sunday nights we go on social media, and then we're on the Crusade channel on Monday afternoons. So just keep that in mind. And with that, let us continue into the breach. I'm going to hand it over to Joe Resinello.
We're going to start with a prayer because all good things start with a prayer, and this is a good thing. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, before you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen.
Saint Dominic,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. So so as always, we say it all the time on the show. There's never anything that you look through the news, and there is always something for guys like us to talk about. There's always something to talk about with you. What we try to identify are people who we're on the same page with, and what we mean by that is this: they're bold, they're fearless, they don't cower in the face of the evil that's going on out there. Now, one of those guys, by the way, over the weekend, I happened to catch DeSantis. Now, we're big DeSantis fans here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe, and I think for good reason, Joe Resinello. That guy has shown that he's got some stones.
Oh,
okay?
Absolutely.
And he's doing a lot of great things. But remember, the greatest counter-revolutionary act you could commit right now is to open your mouth and speak the truth. Another guy that's doing that is Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson from North Carolina. And he gave a speech recently. I'm going to hand it over to Joe because we're going to break that down, because this guy, if you ask me, Joe Resinello, he's watching the Frontline with Joe and Joe. All right, that might be a bold statement, I know, but he may be watching the Frontline. What do you have to say about that?
Just to give a little, those who may not know who he is, Mark Robinson, he's a rising star in the Republican Party. It's easy to see why if you listen to the clip. He speaks the truth and is not afraid to call out the radical left in the most frank of terms. He recently spoke at the Republican Party convention in North Carolina, and his speech brought the House down. I mean, keep this in mind. This is an African-American Republican, and he is just talking straight up and down truth bombs, Joe.
And not wishy-washy Republican. Again, we wish to God he were Catholic, okay? And we pray for him to be in the Catholic Church, but he is a man of goodwill. The church has a teaching on that too, okay? We look for people of goodwill. We're not on the same page theologically, okay? But we are brothers in this battle. And as long as Mark Robinson, first of all, he's pro-life, okay? I made sure, because you never know with Republicans, and especially nowadays. He is pro-life, okay? He got well known because he gave a speech before he was lieutenant governor, and this had propelled his fame because he gave a speech on the Second Amendment. And he was trying to make the point that I'm the bad guy because I want to have a gun in my house to protect my family, or I regard the right to keep and bear arms as something essential because I have a right to self-defense. Okay, that propelled him. He obviously is an advocate of free speech, because if you look at, let's say, what he's talking about, in other words, he's being bold in his speech, and he ain't afraid to be canceled. And Joe, we're going to break down his speech. Okay, this guy he gets it. He gets it. He is not just fighting the political battle; he's fighting in the culture war.
Well, he's also similar to DeSantis. You mentioned DeSantis earlier. I mean, he's just to be honest with you, he's not cowering at all.
At all.
And this is, I think, what people have to do. They have to go. Listen, I've said this on other shows, and I'm going to say it again. This is going to collapse under its own weight. I don't know how long it's going to take, but there are already cracks in the woke revolution. I noted one this week on our social media platform. Recently, the Islanders beat the Bruins in the playoffs in hockey.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yes, I would agree.
A local team beat Boston.
But, they're playing in Long Island, and when they sang the national anthem, you couldn't even hear the woman singing it. The crowd was singing it, everyone at the top of their lungs. Keep this in mind. This is Long Island. Now, people might say, well, it's hockey. How many, leftists are in a Listen, you're talking about hockey playoffs. It's not cheap to get that ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those guys aren't like sanitation workers in Brooklyn.
They're not Joe and Joe.
No, because the worst seat in the house costs bucks. So these are well-to-do people who are seeing that game. They're spending money. And here's another thing. The whole entire arena was singing the national anthem. And that, to me, is an indicator. You got to look for things like that, indicators. Like I say this all the time. The best political poll is looking out your window. And that, to me, says something, because this is bluer than blue New York. And you see something like that, this is going to collapse. Now, listen, does that mean that the culture is going to change? No.
Can I stop you there for
Absolutely.
a second? But what it does indicate, there are more of us than there are of them. I'm sorry to put it in those terms, Joe Rossinello. We're Catholic men. We wish we didn't have to do that. But they have made it an us or them proposition. They don't want to. They will not compromise on anything, on any corner. When we did our interview several months ago with Tim Gordon, I repeat it all the time on this show. He made a very good point. The left looks at the 2 inches in the room that they didn't get already, and they say, well, why didn't we get that? And then they fight like tooth and nail to go and get that 2 inches. Well, that's what we have to do. That's what a guy like Mark Robbins is doing. Those fans, those Islander fans. Let's remember something about Long Island, just in defense of Long Island, which I've never been the biggest fan of that, geographical expression.
Pain to get to.
Island,
those who don't know it, to get to Long Island, there's only a few ways to get in and out.
Right.
It's tough.
But Long Island is an interesting combination. Okay, you have minority communities. You have a lot of Jews. You have a lot of Italians. You have a lot of Irish. And you know what Long Island is? Long Island is not New York City as far as the numbers are concerned. Long Island is primarily conservative. Okay, they really are out there. Okay, and again, I don't care if you're talking about necessarily Jews or Catholics or Irish. Of course, there's liberals amongst those groups, but Long Island itself is a conservative place. Okay, if you look like a congressman like Lee Zeldin. Lee Zeldin is a Jewish congressman from Long Island. Lee Zeldin is a Donald Trump supporting congressman. He supports the America First agenda. Okay. I don't know where he is on all the issues, but generally speaking, he's a guy who I'll listen to on occasion to give insight into a particular issue. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's great because in the era of woke sports, to see the Islander fans,
huge.
To me, it's like, take that, LeBron James. That's what I take that, Colin Kaepernick. That's the way we see it. Okay. So there are more of us than there are of them. And Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, again, African-American conservative Republican, okay? He might actually be a little bit more Republican for my taste than I like because he goes out of his way to say that. But he says it in a more traditional sense of the Republican Party, not what we talk about on the show all the time, which is the rhino version of Republican. He's talking about the party of Lincoln, okay? The party of freedom, the party of equality. So having said that, we look to him as a person of goodwill. He's a brother in this culture war. He's not just fighting the political battle. So let's get into it, Joe, and we're gonna break down his speech a little bit. We're not going to cover the whole thing, but the salient points we want to talk about here, and I'm going to hand it over to Joe, and we'll talk about it. He starts out this way. Americans are a country of people that should be proud of who they are and what they've accomplished. And despite what the left may say about you or this country, it's one that not only needs defending, it deserves defending. Now, I'm going to hand it over to you, Joe. Joe and I have a lot of problems with America, okay, in its current form. okay, whether it be consumerism, that culture, whether it be the culture of death, okay, America is still, as a concept, as a principle, our Constitution, before it was perverted by the likes of the ACLU and the left, okay, is worth defending, is worth fighting for. Robinson's talking about that. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean,
Joe?
listen, again, to Joe's point, is America perfect? Clearly, it is not. I mean, but nothing is. But I will say this, and I've traveled a lot, more than the average bear. I've seen a lot of this world. There is no place on earth, that includes Europe, that includes Australia, that includes New Zealand, all of which are, that includes Canada, that if you work hard, you can achieve in this country, even if you don't have a college degree. You see, that's what this country has that makes us unique. And I've seen this, and I'll tell you something. Anybody who says otherwise to me, I'm going to tell you straight up, you don't know what you're talking about, because I went to high school with tons of people just like that. I went to high school with a kid. His father was a longshoreman. He's a partner at Wilkie Farb Gallagher. He lives in a $3 million house. His taxes are $87,000 a year in Short Hills, New Jersey. His father unloaded boats. So, like, don't tell me that you can't. Now, granted, my friend Tony was gifted. He was very intelligent. But I also know people who didn't go to college that did very well. That's what makes this country unique.
Right.
And you know something? It's about, that doesn't mean it's easy. A lot of sacrifices go into that. A lot of hard work. But America's greatness is in that. Try to do that in Brazil.
No.
Try to do that in England.
You're not going to do that. See, the problem is not prospering. We all know. And again, if you deny this, especially like the liberal elites, many of whom come from working class and humble beginnings. I know a lot of them in my life, okay? Now, it's for you to badmouth America. The only reason you had a shot, now I'm talking about the sons and daughters of, let's say, that are the generation before us, okay? The sons and daughters of the generation before them, okay? Call them baby boomers, all right? Their parents were dirt poor, and they came here and made it, all right? And these liberal elites, after having made it, then they want to turn around and they want to bash the country that they've made it in, which kind of annoys me, okay? Because look, if you want to hold America to all these standards, and we should be held to standards, okay? But then you got to hold us to the rest of the world. In that way, we are relative to the rest of the world. Would you rather live in Brazil? Or would you rather live in a European country where if your father's a garbage collector, you're going to be a garbage collector unless you're completely gifted? So again, America's got its problems. But this idea that America is irredeemable and those who support the Constitution as originally written and how it's supposed to work, okay, with checks and balances in the whole 9 yards, okay, and the respect for freedom of speech and religion, all right, and all of that, okay, we're not irredeemable, Hillary. We're not deplorable. And that's what Mark Robinson is pointing out. Let me give you another example, Joe Russell, because you mentioned that naughty word that the left doesn't want to talk about. Self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice, okay? Here's Robinson. The greatest example that I saw and witnessed it firsthand on television was during 9/11, people running away from the buildings and running away in horror, and he saw policemen and firemen running towards the buildings, okay? Basically running towards their deaths. Joe, if it's something that we say around the kitchen table, okay, but you tell me, I'm tired of cop bashing in this country.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
I'm tired of it. Because you want to know what? Because I guarantee you a lot of those men and women that ran into the World Trade Center, okay, no matter who they were, whether they were white or black or Latino or Asian or whoever they were that ran into those buildings, nowadays, any one of those cops would be considered a racist by the left. They're considered the enemy of the American people if you listen to Black Lives Matter and Antifa. What do you have to say about it, Joe? Because last time I checked, the people that run into burning buildings, they're a self-sacrificing bunch.
Well,
okay?
It's funny. This past week in my hometown, there was a parade for law enforcement, believe it or not, in the great state of New Jersey. And my daughter's grammar school all attended it, K through 8 and faculty on the street. I was so proud of that, actually. I was proud for my town. I was proud for my daughter's school. She goes to a Catholic school. But to Joe's point, we have to support our law enforcement. And B, there's a lot of people out there who do. That was an outward sign, by the way, because you won't get that in a public school in New Jersey. No way. Yet K through 8, faculty down the line to the smallest kindergartner on the street, a parade for law enforcement. You see, we're out there. Don't think we're not. And I'm telling you, the cracks are beginning to show. That's a crack, by the way, right on Main Street in my little town in New Jersey. So that is a crack. And I'm telling you, this woke garbage, again, I can't tell you when it's going to end. It's going to end.
And the thing is, too, because of the fact that conservatives do not have control, it's the opposite. The left has control of the media, of academia, of Hollywood, of the music industry, of all of it. You would think that the entire country is woke. And now they, by the way, have corporate America. Okay? So you would think that the entire country is woke, that the entire country believes that marriage, it could be anything you want it to be. That's not true. In fact, that's a lie. They're not doing a national poll on that. In fact, we're going to talk later on in the show on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. We're going to talk about the hole in their narrative when it comes to abortion and how the numbers don't bear it out. These guys, they don't like numbers. They don't want national referendums. They don't want national polls, good and accurate national polls, because you know what you'll find? There are more of us than there are of them. But CNN's not going to let you know that. MSNBC's not going to let you know that. The latest Hollywood movie coming from the likes of Meathead, they're not going to let you know that. Okay, they're going to make it seem like everybody thinks like those people in Hollywood, and everybody thinks like Jake Tapper, and everybody thinks like Diane out there, and everybody thinks like all the wacko radicals in the academic establishment. Well, that's just not true. And Mark Robinson is a guy, he's an everyman, Joe. This Absolutely. Guy's not a politician. This guy's an everyman. That's why he says it the way it is. Let's keep going. And this is where I say he's been watching the Frontline with Joe and Joe, by the way. Okay. And we got a couple minutes before the break. But real quick, he says that he's talking about the cops and the firemen, the self-sacrificing types that went and sacrificed their lives. They didn't go in there, by the way, asking, well, I'm going to go in and save white people. Or I'm going to go out, I'm going to go in. Oh, the men went in there and say, I'm going to save men. No, they went in there to save other Americans. Okay. That's what they did, because that was their job. He said, this is a quote from Lieutenant Governor Robinson. That's got to be us this day, right here. And what's the trouble? Now, this is the key. The trouble is the Biden regime. We call it regime. He called it administration. The Biden regime that is seeking to turn this country into a socialist hellhole. The trouble is Antifa, who wants to roam the streets and beat you into submission. Just ask Andy Ngo how that goes for him when he covers Antifa, when they beat the crap out of him, okay, that he had to flee the country and then came back and got the crap beat out of him again. We covered that over the last couple of weeks. The trouble is Black Lives Matter that claims to care about the lives of black people, but turns a blind eye while violence in the black communities are taking lives at a genocidal rate, and they turn a blind eye.
And he's an African-American.
Right.
You see, this is the thing that I love about this cat, is basically he's not afraid to go against the mainstream.
Right.
And he'll hear it for that, right, by the way. And that's the type, you see, that's what a leader does. A leader doesn't like stick his finger in his mouth and then feel where the wind is going and then follow along. A leader basically gets up front and basically, you know, he is cutting through like the forest, cutting through and basically doing just that, leading,
right,
not following. This is a great speech. You should check it out if you haven't heard it. And frankly, I think he's someone to watch, Joe Pasillo.
No, he's got to be. You want to know why? This America First movement, Joe and I used to say all the time that, you know, Rush Limbaugh didn't become as popular as he became very popular because of his talent, okay? But Rush Limbaugh reflected something that was already going on. That's our view of Donald Trump, okay? Donald Trump became president because Donald Trump, we believe, actually believed in what he was saying and what he stood for. And he reflected the movement in the country and in the world, because we always remind people, Brexit happened 6 months before Trump actually was elected, okay? So they already showed signs and are continuing to show signs of that in Europe, okay? But Mark Robinson is reflecting what we're all talking about. And that's why he's the real deal. That's why he's going to be, because this movement, this America First movement, that we want to put our interests and our people first, okay, is not going away anytime soon. This is a conversation that we're going to continue on the other side of the break. Please stick around. You're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and we are in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our chat room is open, crusadechannel.com/chat. Please remember, the Crusade Channel is doing a subscriber push, okay? And it's all my church who runs the Crusade Channel is asking of you is go to crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, and listen free. And at the end of listening to all of the lineup on the Crusade Channel, particularly Mike Church, that you will be convinced that you should subscribe. Joe and I both subscribe to the Crusade Channel. Both Joe and I are proud to be on the Crusade Channel. Both Joe and I receive no financial compensation to be here. We're here because it's an important platform and it's worth spreading the word about, okay? So go to crusadechannel.com, try out their free trial subscription. It's going to probably go for about another 60 days or so. And stick around with us. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to The Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, and Joe Resinello, way in the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. Please be sure to go to crusadechannel.com, hit listen free for the trial subscription, and we are convinced that you're going to want to be a subscriber to Mike Church and the entire lineup at the Crusade Channel. So having said that, let's just put a finer point on Mark Robinson, then we'll move on. Joe, this guy is us. This guy is all the people out there that are listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. This guy is talking the way we are, and that's why he's not only he may become a senator, he may become a congressman, he may become the governor, okay? He may get put on the vice president. He may get put on the next 2024 ticket. Okay?
I think he's going to be in the cabinet.
Maybe in the cabinet. Okay, maybe Secretary of Education. Again, we don't need. You know what I'm tired of? Oh, he's got no experience to be a cabinet. Well, we're going to talk about him in a little bit. We're going to talk about Javier Becerra. How come nobody says anything about the fact that Javier Becerra's got no healthcare experience whatsoever, yet he's the Secretary of Health and Human Services? So you know what? Your argument that, well, he's got no experience, that means nothing, because it means nothing to you. You want an ideologue there. We want somebody who's going to represent our values in the cabinet. This guy is going places, and we need to watch him, okay? Let's like with DeSantis, okay? Maybe DeSantis is a little bit more out there because he's a governor, but nonetheless, these are the people that Joe and I determine, at least right now, are on our side truly, truly.
Well, this is an interesting story after, the Robinson thing. And if you haven't listened to it, check it out on YouTube. His basic diatribe at the Republican Party
convention in North Carolina. And I think
definitely worth your time.
You could go to Gateway Pundit. And Joe and I are working on getting some audio clips and everything to put on the show, okay? But nonetheless, right now, you could go on Twitter or you could go on Gateway Pundit and put in Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. And it's a three-minute clip, and you will be impressed.
This story is coming from the Federalist. It's from Kenny Zhu. And basically he tells us that critical race theory, its roots trace back to Harvard University. I want to break this down for you. In the past several months, multiple state legislatures have made moves to ban critical race theory from their public schools. Activists have opined that critical race theory is either the cure for racial injustice in America or the most dangerous force threatening our democracy. I want to give you a little background, even before Harvard, just to give you some ideas of where this came from. Basically, this was borrowed from an Italian Marxist philosopher, Antonio Gramsci. I'm ashamed that he's Italian. Actually.
I am too.
It's actually sad.
And people should know, just to digress for 1 second, I'm going to hand it back over to Joe. That's why we all need to take a break sometimes from social media and start picking up books. Antonio Gramsci is one of those 20th century characters that all people like us and people of goodwill need to know about. Okay, and Joe's going to give you. We've mentioned him on the show several times. He's had tremendous influence on the radical left over the last 100 years. Okay, and unfortunately, he continues to
Well,
have
actually,
that influence.
his name, there's a movie in EWTN, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, about
Saul Alinsky. Right.
He's noted in that. If very good documentary, worth your time to check out. Well, anyway, Gramsci penned a theory called cultural hegemony. And basically, it's by capitalist ruling. It's basically like saying that a group of Ivy League law professors developed this school of thought called critical legal studies. It synthesizes Gramsci's theory of hegemony with racial classification. The main tenets of the philosophy include that justice is inherently subjective.
That's a problem right there, but go ahead.
The law is nothing but a political tool, and the system will only ever provide good outcomes only for the wealthy and privileged. Their proposed solution was to overthrow Western liberal society. So this was Gramsci's idea, and again, it was basically embraced by Ivy League law professors.
Now I can hear them now saying, well, what do you two jamokes from North Jersey know about critical legal studies? Number one, as I mentioned earlier, we read, okay? So we know about the critical legal studies going back decades. We know all about it, okay? They are radicals. Really, what does this say? Gramsci puts forth a point of view, all right, and the critical legal studies puts out a point of view that, again, justice is subjective. That's a lie. Justice is not subjective. Justice is objective. Those things that are just and unjust are recognizable by all people. And you're not being honest if you, let's take abortion, just to give an example, okay? It is objectively unjust. You are doing something to someone that they do not deserve. There is no justice in it whatsoever. So no, justice is not subjective. And this idea that the capitalist ruling class manipulates the idea of what's just and unjust through the laws and manipulates the laws to keep themselves in wealth and privilege, okay? Now, it's not going to come as a shock to any of you out there listening to Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, that the wealthy and the powerful seek to manipulate the system for their own benefit. We believe that.
And they do.
But that's not systematic. That's something that can be defeated by people standing up to them. Okay? Joe and I are not living under some false consciousness that we think that the law, we delude ourselves into believing that the law protects us. No, the law does protect us. You have to fight to have those in power to make sure that the laws protect you. But nonetheless, the laws do. And justice is objective. But what do they really do here, Joe Resinello? How does this translate into critical race theory? Those who propose critical race theory are basically doing a tit for tat. Well, you did it to us. Now we're going to do it to you. Because what you think is unjust, we think is just. Reparations, for an example. We think reparations are unjust. You're not due a check because your great-grandmother was a slave. Doesn't mean you get a check for $300,000. Sorry, that's not just. You don't deserve it, okay? If your great-grandmother was still alive, maybe she gets it, okay? But you don't get it. So it's unjust, but they have to make justice seem subjective so that they can peddle that notion. And then what do? They use the law to benefit them. In other words, and everything is according now to race. That's how they use this critical legal studies framework in the critical race theory framework. We are now going to do it to you because justice is subjective and we consider it just that we now persecute you. That's what Ibram Kendi and people like him are all about.
But let's even talk about what's going on in public schools. You have basically teachers telling white children that their parents are irredeemably racist.
No.
You see discrimination against Asian Americans in college administrations to force racial equality. You see critical theory in practice. You see that's critical theory in practice right now. We've covered this on our show numerous times in blue states. And parents, frankly, are starting to push back a little bit.
Right.
I mean, I'll be truthful with you. I find it very insulting that someone could say to me, just because of the color of my skin, that I'm a racist.
Right.
I mean, gosh, that is crazy. And you're going to tell my kids this in public school?
And then expect you not to have anything to say about it. That's the most nefarious one. There's a bunch of videos, by the way. Some of these moms are really stepping up, by the way. kudos to these moms. Okay, of course they're going to be called racist. Okay, of course.
I don't even know, but in all
racist.
honesty, and objectively speaking, I don't even know how you can call them racist.
Well,
like,
no,
but I actually think standing, like, listen, just because I'm white, I'm a racist.
Yeah.
My family wasn't even in this country when slavery existed. We weren't even here. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, my father was a barber. What did I do to you? Basically, we just eked out an existence, my family, from Newark to Rutherford to me. So, I mean, like, eked out an existence, struggled and sacrificed to educate their kids.
Right.
And I'm a racist just because I'm white?
Yes.
I mean, this is where, I'll be honest with you, it's an overplay. This is going, I'm telling you, this is going to backfire ugly. Well, it may actually, Joe, I'll be honest with you, it may backfire in a way they may not like.
Well, listen, they need to take some lessons. They need to go back to maybe grammar school, when we learned in our grammar school, not even high school, our grammar school science class, for every action, there is a reaction. See, these people, they just fail to realize, or maybe they're so drunk with power, okay, because technically speaking, they run the government right now, that they think that they can control the reaction. You can't. Joy Reid can go on CNN all she wants and call those moms racist, which she has, by the way. She called at least one of those mothers a racist because she said being opposed to critical race theory does not make me a racist. Joy Reid's response to that was, well, what do you think it makes you? So they think that they can control the reaction. Joe, what they need is a good old-fashioned dose of humility. If they can't see the hand, you just alluded to it. If they cannot see the handwriting on the wall, okay, you have state legislatures, by the way, and I have no confidence, especially before, going back till November of last year. I have no confidence in state legislatures. They're fighting back, Joe Resinello. They're passing legislation. They're banning critical race theory. They're saying absolutely not. This is racist. And they'll say again, because they're Gramsciites, they'll say, no, that's just your version of justice. Well, no, there's not my version of justice and your version of justice. Joe just made a good point. His grandparents did nothing except come to this country, work hard, have children, and prosper. Okay? And prosper. There is nothing racist about it. Didn't do a damn thing to a black person. Okay? And they'll have you convinced that somehow what you're proposing is unjust and what they're proposing is just. Again, because they twist justice to make it seem like it's subjective, and it's not.
But also, it hasn't even bubbled up into the courts, because a lot of these situations are soon going to bubble up to the courts, and I don't think they're going to fare very well. This is another thing I noted this week. There was a case that basically went to the Supreme Court that it was ruled on 9-0. Not in favor of the Biden administration. Mm-hmm. And this is a track record of Obama. Obama had the worst record of any modern president in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
These ideas are not going to fly, even amongst liberal justices. This is not going to fly.
Right.
I'm telling you this right now. Listen, we all know the courts are flawed. We all know that the country is flawed. I'm flawed. We all know everything human is flawed. We get it. Okay. However, these ideas are not going to fly in the courts. This is going to bubble up. And when it does, it's going to get shot down. It's going to get shot down. And I'll tell you this. There were people, obviously, Martin Luther King. What he accomplished, amazing. He was a man of bravery. He lost his life. He was killed. He spoke truth to power. They killed him. Straight up. Martin Luther King would not be for this.
No. The reason why is because when Martin Luther King was in jail, okay, he was writing his letters from a Birmingham jail. Who was he quoting and what was he writing
Jesus.
about? Well, Jesus, but St. Augustine and the idea of justice, okay? These people reject justice. And again, I'll go back to the same thing. It's not because it's some deep philosophical thought on their part. These are not smart people. They're good at manipulation. They'll convince you somehow, some way, okay, that Joe's grandparents are unjust, but that those who kill black babies in the womb and those who support the murder of black babies in the womb are somehow acting justly. Because remember, Gramsci's a Marxist. Okay, Orwell wrote about this. This is the idea of truth being a lie, lie being the truth, creating all this fuzziness and haziness so that you could do what, Joe Resinello? Gain political and cultural hegemony. That's what it's about, making it where everybody thinks alike. That's what Gramsci was about. That's what cultural hegemony is about. How do you do that? You take over all the institutions of a civil society, starting with the church. Wildly successful, if you ask me, in the 20th century with the infiltration of the Catholic Church. But then you're talking about the academia, talking about the media, talking about the entertainment industry. That's cultural hegemony. And now in America, you have all of that, okay? And you got to throw in the corporations because they're all on board with it too.
Yeah, but you know something? The corporations are on board with it because it's to their advantage. They'll flip. If it turns out to not be in their advantage, they'll flip in 3 seconds. I'm going to tell you this right now. This is so blatantly not going to last. And listen, I'm a realist. I'm married to an African-American woman. There are racists in this world.
Sure there are.
And there is racism. Let's be real. It's there. It's in the world. Let's be real. However, this is an overreach when you start calling anyone with white skin just because they have white skin a racist and make you sit through an indoctrination center. I mean, like seminar, just because you're white.
And they've been doing it for decades.
Like, listen, this is, if you ask me, it's an overreach. It's, to be honest with you, it's not fair. And I'm going to tell you this right now. What's going to happen is there is going to be an incident and it's going to go to the courts. And you know what the courts are going to say? Wrong.
Right.
Wrong.
Because
you watch, mark my words.
I think you're exactly right, Joe Arsenault, because at the end of the day, it is demonstrable, objectively demonstrable, that critical race theory is a racist theory. It says that somehow, some way, you're privileged simply because of the color of your skin. And that is a lie. That is a blatant lie. History doesn't prove that at all. That somehow, some way, that Joe works in a bank, okay, is not addicted to drugs, doesn't live on the streets of Newark simply because of the color of his skin. And that's what critical race theory proposes. They also propose that if you oppose critical race theory, you're a racist.
Well, the word is,
I mean, how nefarious is that?
The thing that's interesting is the word racist used to have a very negative connotation to it. It's losing that because it's thrown around. To be honest with you, if you are a person truly fighting for equality amongst the racists, I would be against this. And I'm going to tell you why, because the word is getting used too much. It's losing its meaning. It really is, if you ask me. And this is, I think, an overreach, and it will collapse. I'm telling you this right now. I actually think it's going to hurt equality amongst the races in the long run.
Well, doesn't it sow division? What? Let me ask you something.
There's no question. I have never seen in my life, I didn't live through the 60s. I have never seen like issues like now.
No.
Ever in my entire life.
And those who say they want to unify this country are the ones that propose this crap, and it's doing nothing but dividing us. It's actually trying to convince people that if you see someone who has white skin, okay, that person is a racist and they are your enemy.
How could you possibly make such a statement?
And Joe, here's the problem. You got to pay $80,000 a year to go to Harvard. But this is what we're sending our parents all the time. I want my son and my daughter to go to Harvard.
My kid to go to Harvard.
I'm not saying
no, but I mean just
people like us. Okay. You're going to spend 80, 85, 90 grand a year to send your kid to Harvard so they can learn this crap? Really? Like you really think that your child, because you get, well, my kid's going to become a doctor, so they're going to take pre-med. Harvard's going to force them to take critical legal studies at some point. They're going to force them to learn, I use that word very loosely, learn about what critical race theory actually is. They're going to force kids to sit through that. You're paying Harvard? You should be banging down their doors. Benjamin Franklin put it like this. He said, it takes many good deeds to build a good reputation, but only one bad one to lose it. Harvard doesn't have one bad deed. Harvard's been pulling this nonsense and the rest of the Ivy League for a very long time. But particularly, I remember when my brother was in school in the 80s, my brother went to Yale. And my brother was the first person who ever told me about the critical legal studies department at Harvard. They're communists. That's what they are. Stop looking at these people like they're interested in racial equality or unification or unity or anything like that. They're communists. What are communists? At the end of the day, they're evil criminals. And what do you have to do to perpetrate evil, Joe Resinello? If you're just trying to destroy a culture, you have to divide. It's an age-old military tactic, and the devil knows it very, very well. Divide and conquer. We've all heard it. You have to divide people. And then they're easy. They hate the fact that Joe and Joe are talking about Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who's an African American. Okay, we're like this with that guy in this culture war. He's our brother in this culture war. They can't stand that. He's supposed to hate us, Joe Resinello, and we're supposed to hate him. Why do we let them get away with it? Why does Harvard get $1 billion a year of our tax money? Could somebody explain that to me, Joe?
Please. Harvard is nothing but an unregulated hedge fund that basically pumps garbage into kids' heads.
I never heard that. I never heard, but they are an unregulated hedge fund.
Nothing. Do you know
their endowments just grow and grow?
The largest endowment, just so you know, we'll be honest, is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has the largest endowment in the world. Do you know what the second largest endowment in the world is? Harvard University.
Yeah.
Harvard University.
Billions and billions of dollars.
Untaxed.
Why are they getting $1 billion a year in the name of research and development of our tax dollars when gifted kids, generally you have to be a real smart kid, okay, to go to those schools to pay over $80,000 a year, okay? Why are they getting $1 billion? How on earth are you going to justify that as a federal government giving the second largest endowment in the world more of our money for them to then turn around and call us racist? How much longer do we put up with this stuff? How much longer do we just let them go on? Because they're the smart people, Joe Resinello. We're just the rubes, okay? We sit around our kitchen tables and complain and go and work our 9 to 5s and put on our white-collared shirt or blue-collared shirt. It doesn't matter. And they make sure that we have nothing to say. And what they hate about the Frontline with Joe and Joe, what they hate about the Crusade Channel, what they hate about Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, what they hate about DeSantis, what they hate about Donald Trump, what they hate about all of us is what we're looking at them saying, you're screwed, creepo. We know your game. We've known your game. And now we're fighting back. Now you better watch your butt. And we don't mean it in a violent way like they do. Okay. We're going to cut off your money eventually and get some politicians with some spine who are going to dissolve the Federal Department of Education and dry up that money that goes to the Ivy League and many other schools in this country. And we're going to fight back. You're not going to tell our kids they're racist because of the color of their skin. You're talking to two guys here that are married to two African-American sisters. And I'm going to quote Rocky one more time. Screw you, creepo.
It's not going to fly. And I'll be honest with you, in 1 minute, this could change. Things change in a heartbeat. And I'll tell you this, if you get a president that actually, Trump, for all the rhetoric that people like targeted Trump for, to be honest with you, he wasn't that radical. The rhetoric was radical. The action, I'm talking about the action of Donald Trump. It really wasn't that radical.
No.
You may get a Republican that actually does what Donald Trump said he was going to do.
Right. And that guy might be Ron DeSantis, might be Mark Robinson.
And you see, this is where the pendulum, a lot of times one president makes the next president. We got Donald Trump because of Barack Obama. That's a fact. But you know something? There's going to be a reaction to this presidency. And I don't think it's going to be more than one term. I'm going to tell you this right now. Just from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing out there in my own backyard, I see people getting into this, like on social media, that really never had a concern. They were indifferent. Why? Because it's affecting them. Their kid may play softball. Maybe they have a girl. She plays softball. And now you're talking about boys being on the girls softball team. Now all of a sudden they're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Or you like, I'm just using one example. It's an overreach.
Right.
And this critical race theory, when you're starting to tell people just because they're white, that you're a racist, and somehow, some way you contributed to this injustice. And was slavery an injustice? Of course it was. Of course it was. Are there people who are racist? Of course they are. However, that doesn't mean that you could just blanket every person who has white skin and call them a racist. And this is where I'm saying the overreach is going to have a backlash, people.
Let's leave it right there. We got to take a break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, way in the breach on the Crusade Channel, on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Please be sure to hit the listen free button at crusadechannel.com, because we're convinced you're going to want to be a subscriber to the Crusade Channel with Mike Church, Joe and Joe, and the whole lineup on the Crusade Channel. Also, please follow Joe and I on social media wherever you see us. Please help us out with a click, a like, a share, or whatever you could do. We are on Patreon if you want to pop in a couple bucks for us. Patreon.com, Frontline with Joe and Joe. And remember, we're on AM radio up in Connecticut at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. You can download the app and listen to our Sunday afternoon interview shows. We have some great interviews on there. We got a great conversation going. We're in the breach, and we're probably going to be storming the machine gun nest tonight. So stick around. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Please go on the website, hit listen free, and that'll be your free trial subscription. And we are convinced, along with Mike Church, that you're going to want to be a subscriber to the Crusade Channel. Having said that, let's just jump right back into the conversation, because as the old saying goes, the hits just keep on coming.
Well, this one's coming from Penny Starr. She's covering something out of Ohio. The Ohio GOP Lawmakers Act, they're protecting a teacher from being forced to embrace left-wing gender policies. This is interesting.
This plays to what you said about overreach.
Exactly. And it went to the courts, and it went into this particular teacher's favor. And a lot of people may not know about it because, of course, the mainstream media doesn't cover it. Republican lawmakers in Ohio are responding to a case of Loudoun County Public School District teacher who was suspended after expressing his religious convictions, which forbade him from referring to a transgender child by pronouns that don't refer to their biological sex. Please go.
Here's, because I don't want to take away, because this is all important information that you need to know. First and foremost, they're asking this man to lie. That's what he's objecting to. Again, what are we talking about with critical race theory? What I see as just and what I see as unjust is objective. What I see as a boy, what I see as a girl is a matter of biological fact. And they're penalizing him for refusing to tell a lie. Go ahead, Joe.
The effort to protect the teacher's rights to free speech and the free exercise of religion is being demonized by the media, including David Bach's left-wing website, The American Independent, which reports that the Ohio Republicans were taking discriminatory stances on transgender issues in the classroom. Now, the Ohio bill, it's HB 322, which was introduced last month, says that teachers should not be required by state agencies or school administration to affirm a belief in multiplicity or fluidity of gender identities or like ideas if it conflicts with their personal or religious beliefs. Now, again, you're asking a man who, he's probably a Christian. He could be a Jew. He could be an Orthodox Jew. I don't know. To be honest, it could go either way because we see exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. He's basically saying, I am not going to lie to this child. You're an adult in a school, okay? You're supposed to protect and guide children. This is why I'm so against public schools. This is a public school. This is a disgrace. Mm-hmm. This is a disgrace. 20 years ago, if you affirmed a child in this situation, to be honest with you, you would probably lose your job.
Or be arrested.
No lie. And that belief is backed up by John McHugh at Johns Hopkins University.
Paul McHugh,
my bad.
Right.
John Hopkins University, the best medical school, arguably in the world. And he was the director of the psychiatric department, mm-hmm. I believe.
Right. He does science.
Yeah.
I thought we're supposed to follow the science.
So this is, again, now perfect example of They pushed back on this teacher. He pushed back at them. It went to the court. Guess what? He won.
Right.
You see, this is what's going to happen. You see, you could have all your Jake Tapper, MSNBC nonsense conversation. You could bully people here and there, but ultimately someone is going to push back and take you to court. And when it happens, and it's going to happen in a corporation too, don't think it's not.
No, they're next.
What's going to happen is it's going to cost them, and then they will back away because they don't care. Well, I got news for you. All they care about is they have to do this, quote unquote, right now because it's the thing to do. But when money talks, BS walks.
Look, you hear that? That's called a knock on the door, okay? And when the knock on the door to the board of directors, okay, in boardrooms across America, is the head bean counter, okay, in your corporation, probably the CFO, okay? And he says, wokeness is over because it's turning the other way. And if we stay with this, we're going to lose money. And you know what they're going to do in a heartbeat?
They're going to switch to gears.
They're going to come out with some conciliatory statement, okay, about not offending anyone and welcoming all people. And then they're going to try to go back to being neutral. My brother and I had a conversation over this past weekend, Joe Resinello. He made a very good point. When you boycott them, okay, and hopefully by the grace of God, we could come together in this country. Stop listening to conservative Republicans telling you the boycotts don't work, because they do if you do them if you do them the right way. But not only do you threaten the boycott, okay, you make it clear to them, we're going to boycott you. If you don't change, it is irrevocable. My brother said, you have to make it irrevocable. Let me give you an example, okay? I think I might have mentioned this before on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. If I have, I apologize, but it bears repeating. I don't use Gillette products. I grew up with Gillette products. I love their razors. I love their shave gel. Okay. I love their deodorant. Okay. They make a damn good product. Okay. They decided that they were going to apologize for being too toxically masculine. Okay. And they insulted old guys like us who have bought Gillette products for decades, Joe Resinello. Decades. My father used Gillette. I used Gillette. Okay. My brother used Gillette. I will never go back to Gillette. That's what we mean by irrevocable. That means that if Gillette comes out tomorrow and says we made a mistake, I'm going to quote my 81-year-old Italian mother, and I'm going to look at them and say,
"That's too bad.
You lost me." And I'm going to give you another one while we're on the same subject. I then switched to Harry's razors because Harry's was advertising with Matt Walsh and Mike Knowles. And I like both those guys, okay? And I assume that Harry's probably is a reasonable organization if they're advertising on these guys' show, okay? Harry's came out and got woke. And guess what I did with Harry's? Irrevocable, done with them too. Now, what does that mean for me? That means I got to find a way to shave my bald head, okay, and my face, okay, without using those products, and I have, all right? But my point is that when they cross that line, do not go back. Coca-Cola crossed that line. Don't buy Coca-Cola products. Don't buy them. Don't buy them. Whether it's the airlines, don't do business with those airlines. No matter who it is, make it clear to them as conservative Americans, if you make this decision, we're not giving you a second chance. You make this decision, it's irrevocable. We will never come back. You see how fast you're going to hear this on the door. If we did it in numbers, Joe. If we did it in numbers.
And I'm all for financial boycotts, but what I'm just saying is this. I believe that the courts will speak on all of these issues. It just takes a case. And there's going to be a number of them. People are going to sue. Another perfect example. There was a case recently in Georgia where a gentleman, he was from Africa. He wasn't African American. He was actually an African immigrant who was in Georgia and wanted to use his free speech to discuss Christianity in the public square. And this particular Georgia college said, you can't do it. You have to do it in this area. And he complied. And then he went to that area and they shut him down. And guess what he did? He pushed back. And guess what happened? The courts ruled in his favor.
Real quick, though. I know you're going to love this, but real quick. But you know who didn't write an opinion in his favor? Chief Justice John Roberts. I don't know what the libs did. I've forgotten the case, but the dude won the case. Okay, But John Roberts basically said, like the coward that he is, yeah, but this happened while he was there. He's no longer there, so it doesn't matter what we say. You see how cowardly John Roberts is? No, but you're supposed to set a precedent, Chief Justice Roberts, that this can't happen to another kid. And what does he do? He kicked, but that kid won. You're right.
And I'm going to tell you this. That's just another example, like we just talked about the example in Ohio. This is not going to fly in the courts. It's not. I'm telling you right now, I didn't go to law school. You watch. You watch, because you're basically pushing the envelope. And again, it doesn't matter what MSNBC says. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters when someone pushes back and you get a big time lawyer, and guess what? You're going to pay up.
That's right.
You're going to pay up. And that is what's going to happen. And it's going to change the dial, because the second, as Joe said, and he's 100% right, that corporations start losing money because of lawsuits that are filed. Like, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. I am Catholic, and I am in lockstep with my Jewish brothers and sisters on traditional marriage. I'm sorry. I believe in marriage. It's between a man and a woman. If I say that publicly at work, I can get fired. And I'm going to tell you this. If I do, you know what I'm going to say? See you in court, because I am Catholic, and that's part of my faith. And every Orthodox Jew that works in this company, they believe the same thing. So you might as well fire them too. And we're going to sue you.
And now let's stay on that a second. They'll turn around and they'll say, okay, that's what you believe, but you have no right to say that at work. Okay,
Why?
But wait, real quick. Okay, I would say in that case, no problem. But then those advocating for same-sex, so-called same-sex unions, those advocating for transgenderism, they can't let their opinions be known either. They can't let their beliefs known. If the conversation is not to be had at work, in the workplace, then nobody can have the conversation. Then if my beliefs get stifled as a Catholic, your belief as a secularist, an atheist, whatever you are, okay, you don't get to say what you want either. So that will be the quandary that corporations will be in, because guess what? If they want to be neutral, they have to say to the homosexual around the water cooler, you can't make that statement that you're okay with same-sex marriage. You can't either, Joe Resinello. You can't make your statement known or belief known, but they can't either. I wonder if corporations would be going down, or be willing to go down that path, because you have to stifle all speech. Then
if they were smart, they would have stayed neutral. You see, if I was on the board, or if I was a CEO, I want nothing to do with this, because I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to make you another prediction. Eventually, you will get a conservative president. It may not be even, I can't predict the future, 2024, but say Joe Biden wins a quote unquote wins again. I don't know. I can't predict the future. I don't think he's going to, but eventually you're going to get a conservative president, because you were so vocal, big tech, because you were so vocal, they're going to break you up.
Well, look at what's happening.
They're going to come after you.
Joe, you've been saying for months, Joe's been saying that all of these, look, they didn't do anything as far as Rudy Giuliani and Trump and anything with all the claims that they were making during the election. But every single one of these states where there were, let's just call them issues, they're all being worked out right now. All right. Why are these people being demonized? For the reason that Joe Resinello just said, because big tech is on them, saying you need to discredit these audits in Arizona and places like that, in Georgia, you need to discredit them, because if these people gain power, these Ted Cruzes of the world, the Rand Pauls of the world, the Hawleys of the world, you know what? They're going to force us into a corner. And you know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to really open up YouTube and open up Facebook. We're not going to be able to censor anybody, and we're not going to be your ally. Why do you think they're going after these states to straighten things out? You want to know why? Because they're going to get effing trounced.
And that's why they should have stayed out of it.
They should have
stayed out of it.
They're interested in making money. They should have saw the handwriting on the wall. If they were interested in their original mission statement, which was to be an open platform, they should have backed out and said they wanted to get woke and they wanted to exert political power and cultural influence in America. Now, again, like I said earlier, Joe Resinello, for every action, there's a reaction. They're not going to win on this election front. These state legislatures are going to short things up. And in 2022, Joe, I wouldn't want to be a Democrat in 2022.
They're going to get crushed.
And 2024, if all these things straighten out, unless he does something that's radically stupid, Ron DeSantis is going to be president of the United States. And then they really better watch their butt, because that guy doesn't take any prisoners, and he speaks a lot better than Donald Trump
And
does.
then it's over. You see, again, is everything, are we going to be like perfect? No, he's not the solution. Jesus Christ is the solution. Let me preface that. But my point is, they stuck their neck out on the line, and it's going to get chopped off. This is eventually going to collapse, and cracks are already starting to show in it.
Oh, yeah.
They're already starting to show in it. And I'm telling you, this stuff, all it takes is it to go to the courts. I just used that example of traditional marriage. Me as a Catholic or as an Orthodox Jew, you have every right as an Orthodox Jew to say, I believe marriage is traditional. Why? Because my religion says so.
Right.
And I have every right to believe that. And if you're going to fire me for that, I got news for you. I'm going to sue the living daylights out of you.
And he'll win.
And I think I'll win.
And he'll lend me some
And I'm going to be honest with you. I
think
think I will win.
No, you
because
wouldn't.
I have every right as a Catholic in this country. You might as well arrest me then for being Catholic.
Well, as I said, Joe Rossino, the only solution that they would have, these big corporations, is to say, as a matter of policy, that they will not allow at work any political, religious, philosophical, cultural discussion. You literally will go to work.
But that's okay. I can live with that.
Well, you want to know what? See, I don't, for the simple reason, and again, this is a whole other conversation. There is a social aspect to work that I appreciate, and I think most people do. They like being around other people, their coworkers, whether they agree with. I don't agree with all my coworkers. Every one of my coworkers knows my positions. I love them all, and they love me. We're not in lockstep. We don't agree. We don't fight. We don't argue about these things. All right. But we have a pretty open workplace. Okay. But the only solution would be, if they don't want to lose that Joe Resinello lawsuit, would be, then there is no discussion of this type, because somebody's going to be, how about this? If you say you don't believe, let's say, for argument's sake, Joe, I'm going to tell you something I have to put up with all day long. I'll tell everybody out there on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, with the people I work with, and I love them. I absolutely do. Okay. And I pray for them every day. Okay. Is if I have to hear the Lord's name taken in vain one more time at work, I mean, I'm offended by that. I am offended by that. I actually told one of my coworkers before he got fired a couple of years ago, and he's Catholic. They said, you really ought to watch it when you take the Lord's name in vain. I said, because it's not good. And he agreed with me, and he was Catholic, and it was out of habit that he did it. I at least planted the seed with him, because I used to do it all the time too. So I'm not judging. But if I told you how many times at work I have to hear the Lord's name taken in vain, if I wanted to make a beef, Joe Resinello, I can make a beef. If I was so thin-skinned like they are when it comes to every little conversation, I could turn around to every one of them and say, if this doesn't stop, I'm calling Human Resources. And if Human Resources doesn't do anything about it, I'm calling the St. Thomas More Society, and I'm going to sue the company because I'm offended. I wouldn't do that.
Of course,
I wouldn't.
I would never do that
because I don't have thin skin.
I don't roll that way.
But by the same token, I'd like to tell all the social media tough guys on the left out there, why don't you grow some thick skin? You grow some thick skin. Have debates. Have real conversations. Don't be afraid. Don't demonize people. Have an argument with somebody. You don't, because if you had a real argument, because there is objective truth, okay, you'll lose, and you know it.
The court, like I said, I'll be truthful with you. You'll have your day in court, and you're going to lose. This stuff is going to end. Enjoy your hour, because that's all you're going to get. Because you're building your house on sand. Your arguments stink. Your ideas stink. They stink. And frankly, they don't bear fruit. Joe Biden has not passed a single thing. And he has the House and basically has the Senate, even though it's a tie. Ms. Harris is the deciding vote. He can't even get Democrats to go along.
That's right.
He can't even get Democrats to go along.
Right.
Your ideas stink.
That's right.
And I got news for you. If you lose, which I think you're going to in 2022, Joe, you might as well go back to Delaware. Your presidency just ended.
And let's get it straight as far as the power, the balance of power in the federal government. Okay, you have a diminished commander in chief. I mean, you calling him commander in chief is actually gives me, a feeling of nausea.
Agita, there's a word.
Agita.
Brioski fights
You have
Agita.
Kamala. Okay, we won't even get into her too much. But as far as the power in the Senate, now the Senate's evenly split 50-50, and Nancy Pelosi has a six-seat majority in the House. Okay, if they really wanted to try to get something done, they maybe could try to work in the middle. But you want to know something, like you said, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema to a degree, but really Joe Manchin, they're not going for this. You have at least 7 or 8 Senate Democrats that are not going to go for a tax increase on corporate America because they want a good economy, because their constituents are working because of Donald Trump. Okay, so the bottom line is this. Okay, if they were really looking out for the American people, they have an opportunity because there's such an even split in the government that can actually get something done. They're not interested. They're interested in this woke nonsense. We're going to go to a break. Let me finish about an example, Joe Rossinello, about fighting back. As far as this is concerned, okay, actually, you know what? Let's take a break, okay? And when we come back, because we're talking about this Ohio, the GOP lawmakers, and they're actually doing something, okay? But I want to put a finer point on it, and then we'll move forward. Remember, go to crusadechannel.com, hit listen free to all of Crusade Channel content. And at the end of it, we know you're going to want to be a subscriber. We would encourage you to do that. Support, as you have been, the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We're always in the breach. We love being on the Crusade Channel. We do have our social media show that you can follow us on Facebook and YouTube, and a whole host of social media sites. And we're on the Veritas Catholic Network. Please be sure to download the Veritas Catholic Network mobile app for all of our content. We go on Sunday afternoons on Veritas, where we have a great interview show there. Stick around. We got more on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. Let's jump back right into it. I want to make a larger point, and then we're going to move on to our next story, okay? There's one thing about protecting this teacher, Joe, okay? But then here's where the Ohio legislature, they might be listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. I don't know. They should be, okay? They might be listening to the Frontline because they went further. You see, you got to remember something. Don't fight. Jack Tatum, remember the cornerback for the Ravens?
Sure.
Jack Tatum was a nasty guy. He wrote a book called They Call Me the Assassin, okay? And Jack Tatum is a local guy. He went to Patterson Eastside High School, okay? He went to Ohio State, which was known for its defense. Jack Tatum used to say the way he was taught at Ohio State, the way they were all taught to hit and tackle at Ohio State was you don't hit the opposing player at the point of contact. That's not your goal. Your goal is 10 yards beyond him. In other words, you want to knock him on his butt. You want to make him feel it. So you go through the point of contact. That's how you really make you have somebody, let's say, like a running back who gets a little nervous when they see you coming. You have to hit through the target, okay? That's football tackling 101. Jack Tatum pointed that out in his book. Well, guess what? The Ohio legislature, I think they might have taken lessons from Ohio State because they went further. They went through the target, and God bless them. I want to read it to you, and then we're going to move on. This is what Joe and I call fighting back, okay? Quote, this is in the legislation, by the way. No teacher shall be required by a policy of any state agency, school district, or school administration to affirm a belief in the systemic nature of racism or like ideas, or in the multiplicity or fluidity of gender identities or like ideas against the teacher's sincerely held religious or philosophical convictions. If a student, now here's the fighting or the hitting through the target, okay? If a student completes a course that includes any of these concepts described in the bill, that course shall not count towards the requirements for high school graduation. You know what that means? Mothers and fathers are going to say, why are you taking that class? It doesn't count for your credits. You're not taking that class. That's what they're saying. You want to take that class? Go ahead. Doesn't count towards your graduation. Doesn't count towards the amount of credits you need to graduate high school in the state of Ohio. God bless them. Joe, that is tackling through the target. Not at the point of contact, but through it and knocking them back about 10 yards.
Well, let's talk about this one. This was rather shocking. Susan Berry covered it. Unvaccinated students attending Exeter, New Hampshire high school prom were numbered with a Sharpie pen and then tracked throughout the evening. A New Hampshire parents' rights advocate group reported on this. This is what they had to say. I find it absolutely unbelievable that this was allowed to treat kids like prisoners in Nazi Germany, a person told the New Hampshire representative. Melissa Litchfield, this is what she had to say, marking them, thus singling them out, and then having to raise their hands is beyond tolerable. This is an interesting statement that Anne-Marie Banfield had to say about it. She basically writes on a blog, Granite Grok. She said this: what if students were branded with a number if they had a sexually transmitted disease? Should they be required to share that information too? What if they had AIDS? Would they have to tell everyone in the school? Where is the ACLU?
Nowhere to be found.
Interesting. Once again, everyone is lost in their woke crap. And again, all it's going to take is one parent to sue.
Right.
And they're going to say, and they're going to make that same comparison. If you had a disease, does everyone have to know about it? Say you had herpes. Do you have to? It's a virus. Herpes is a virus. By the way, it's not curable. Herpes isn't curable. Do you have to tell everyone at your job that you have herpes? No, you don't have to tell them. Absolutely not.
Right. And if I had coronavirus, all right, if I had it and got over it, do I have to tell everybody? Do I?
Absolutely
not.
That's
my personal. What Joe makes a good point. Where's the ACLU on this? Let's stay on them for a second. Okay, Bill Donahue. All right, Bill Donahue's been on the show. And we have an interview with him. If you go to the Veritas Catholic Network podcast page, okay, that was our very first interview that we did on the Veritas Catholic Network. We talked about the Equality Act. Bill Donahue, see, this is why I like Bill Donahue and people like him. He's fair. He's not just an ACLU basher, okay? He says there's been many times in the history of the ACLU where they actually were fighting for people's rights. They actually cared about civil liberties. They actually defended your right to free speech. They actually defended your right to privacy. Joe just made a good point, alluding to what Ms. Banfield said. So I'm supposed to then give you all my personal medical information. You're going to mark me with a Sharpie at a prom? And every 3 dances, I have to hold up my arm and show you the mark that you made on me? Are you kidding me? This is America. Where is the ACLU to swoop in and say, no, you're violating these kids' constitutional right to privacy? They don't have to tell you whether or not they've gotten the vaccine. Who the hell are you? And you make a good point, Joe. Well, AIDS is a public health concern.
Absolutely.
You promote sexual liberation.
How about herpes?
Herpes, all sexually transmitted diseases. You promote sexual liberation for all these kids. Is the girl who's looking to go out and hook up, is she supposed to tell the guy? In other words, I do have HIV. In other words, are you going to force them to do that? Well, they should, morally speaking. Okay. First of all, they shouldn't be doing that, but leaving that aside, all right, you would say that, in other words, that no, that person has a right to privacy. At least I don't have to broadcast that publicly. Why do I have to broadcast whether or not I've gotten a vaccine? That's none of your effing business.
And I'm going to be honest with you. This is another case that's going to go to the courts. Don't think it's not, because all it takes is one person to push the issue. Like we just noted on the other side of the break, that gentleman in that college in Georgia who wanted to basically have a discussion about his Christianity in the public square. They refused him. He took them to court. He won. It's going to go to court. And I got news for you. I actually think you're going to lose. I don't think you're going to do well. Just like we just said, it's your personal medical records. You don't have to tell anybody anything.
But in the age of COVID, they try to convince you that COVID is a different public health issue than all of the other public health issues that have come
Let the
before.
courts still decide it. Well, that's what I say.
Unfortunately, when it came to the courts and buying this argument that it was in the interest of of public health when it came to COVID, which is the reason why John Roberts and the rest of them let Pennsylvania's Secretary of State and the governor get away, and their state Supreme Court get away with what they did by usurping the power of the state legislature back in the summertime last year. Okay, they bought Sotomayor and the rest of them, and John Roberts. They allowed them to make the argument that no, COVID was different. And therefore, you could usurp the power of the state legislature. And something tells me, even though I think COVID is waning now, at least in the public consciousness, I know in New York City, in restaurants, masks are voluntary. Okay, there's no more contact tracing. All right,
masks
so
also in New Jersey, you don't have to wear a mask.
You don't have to wear a
anymore.
mask. I went into Stop and Shop the other day, and I asked the dude, "Do I have to wear a mask?" He goes, "No, it's voluntary." So COVID is waning, but nonetheless, when the next one comes around, or whatever the case might be, so they're going to try to make it seem like COVID is different, which means, and again, I agree with you. Hopefully, the courts, Joe, would work it out, but I don't trust them because the people that are not defending these kids against being marked up with a Sharpie would say, well, it's in the interest of public health because of COVID. Well, that shouldn't be a good argument. That shouldn't be an argument at all.
But here's the thing. I'm not going to rely on Jake Tapper to make that argument. You see, this is where people have to push back a little bit. I'm not going to rely on the New York Times to make that argument.
Right.
I'm not going to rely on MSNBC to make that argument. I'm going to let the courts make it. You see, people, again, have to push back a little bit and basically say, listen, this is my business. It's my business. Mm-hmm. It's not your business. And if you want to make it my business, take me to court. And here's another thing. You may win. And if you may win, it costs you money. It's going to cost you money.
Right.
And that's what people have to do. I think people have to do. Listen, don't tread on me. That's my deal. I won't tread on you. I'll be honest with you. It's one of my mantras of life. I don't impose myself on anyone. Christ didn't impose himself. He proposed a better way. You either choose it or you don't. Mm-hmm. Here's the deal. There's consequences if you don't. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll stay in my lane. Just stay out of mine. That's all I ask.
And by the way, because I can hear it now, Joe Rossinello, I can hear the response. Well, then why don't you back off on abortion? Because abortion's baby killing, and you're not allowed to murder, okay? You're not allowed to murder. You want to be sexually liberated? Like Joe said, we'll preach to you, but if you don't want to hear it, you're going to go out and do what you want. You can't kill your baby, and you can't make us pay for it, even if the state tells you can kill your baby, okay? That's number one. So that's one of the consequences you have to deal with. The other one is I'm not paying for your contraception. You go out and pay for it. You want to go out and get laid? You pay for your own contraception. Costs $5 at the local gas station. Okay? So don't give us that stuff that we have to pay for your contraception. And as far as gay marriage is concerned, you can't redefine something to be something you want it to be when it's not. So yeah, if you want to consider those impositions, you could consider them impositions. But outside of that, stay in your lane and back the hell off of us.
Love it. And I'll be honest with you, we'll see. Listen, the courts are flawed. We all know that. They don't get it right all the time. I'm making a prediction. You overplayed your hand. And a lot of these issues, when they bubble up to the court, you're not going to do well.
I'm never a fan of time passing by too quickly, okay? Because time always seems to pass by too quickly. I can't wait. I can't wait for two things to happen. I want to see the developments that happen as far as certain states that are going to take care of straightening out their election procedures, if you will. And then I can't wait to see what happens on election night in 2022, when the nonsense won't be allowed to occur because state legislatures will have spoken, okay? And then we'll see what happens. Because I'll tell you what, if things get straightened out, and that's a big if, it requires Republican backbone, okay? But if things get straightened out, I'm telling you right now, the Republicans are not going to have a 6-seat majority in the House. It is going to be a lot more of that. And it's for the reason that Joe said, because they've overplayed their hand. Do you know that even in this last election, all right, with all the nonsense in the swing districts, those crucial purple districts, do you know that Republicans won like 26 out of 27 of them, even with all the nonsense? If Biden, like, again, we don't want to get into the election too much, but if it was so overwhelming, why does Nancy Pelosi have a 6-seat majority in the House? It shows you that people are not, regardless of what CNBC and or CNN and MSNBC said, regardless of what they say, the American people aren't buying this, and it's for the reason that Joe said. They don't want this. They look at all this stuff and say, you're not interested in equality. Take Ibram Kendi with critical race theory. They'll say, you're not trying to get people to come together. We recognize critical race theory is racist and divisive, so we don't buy it. And if you impose it on us, we're going to fight back against you in congressional elections, in senatorial elections. We're going to fight you on the local level and the school boards and everything else. Joe, they're going to get their asses handed to them. I believe that. I think it's gonna. I think it's gonna be really, really bad for them.
I actually agree. And to be honest with you, if you do see a president like DeSantis, not only are you going to get beat, but he's going to make you pay. He's going to make you pay. I mean, he's already done it in Florida. I think he's penalizing social media. What is it? $250,000
per incident.
That's my point. He's the president.
Right.
He'll make you pay. And here's another thing. If you get both the House and Senate to swing to the GOP, big tech's finished. They're going to break you up.
Oh, well, they're going to go.
They're going to break you up, my friends.
What did we say before about irrevocable? The Josh Hawleys of the world and the Ted Cruzes of the world who are trying to be civil with Zuckerberg and Dorsey, the mutant, as Joe calls him, the mutant, okay? Trying to be civil with them. When they come hat in hand, say, guys, look, guys, look, no. We didn't mean to censor anybody. You know what? It was low-level interns and people like that. They got a little zealous and they kind of censored a few people. And Josh Hawley and the rest of them need to say, we warned you. We warned you. Okay? You didn't want to do it on your own voluntarily. You thought that the left was going to have power. You didn't want to do it on your own. Well, now it's too late. Now it's going to cost you. Like you said, Joe, make them pay. Don't let them come back. Again, Jack Tatum, don't hit the target at the point of contact. Okay? Go 10 yards through the knock big tech back 10 yards. Okay? And you do that by imposing all the things that Clarence Thomas is talking about, by classifying them as common carriers like the phone company so they cannot stifle anybody's speech. Do you know if I was a stone cold racist, I could pick up the phone and I could call another stone cold racist and I could talk about all sorts of racist things. And I have privacy, okay? So I know that bothers the left, that people actually have the freedom to do that, okay? I don't like racists. I don't want to tap into their phone because I don't want it to happen to me. But that's what's called a common carrier. YouTube and Facebook and the rest of them need to be classified as such. They need to have the penalties ready, Joe Resinello, like DeSantis is doing. If you censor anybody, it's $250,000 per incident. Per incident. Guess what?
It stops.
It stops.
And I'm telling you, I'll give you an example. And this is where the left doesn't see past what's going on in front of them. Look what Harry Reid did. Harry Reid changed the way that our government elects Supreme Court justices.
Mm-hmm.
You used to need 60. And you know something? There was wisdom in that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because that requires compromise. It was wise. Harry Reid changed that. What happened? Donald Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices because of that. He would not have gotten the 3. Don't blame Donald Trump. Blame Harry Reid.
Right.
That was an overplay. It cost them. This is an overplay. It's going to cost you. You watch.
And packing the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's not going to happen.
Solution, that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to happen. You'll get a pushback. That would cost you too. I'm telling you, regular people are not going to tolerate it. They're not. You're going to get people involved that never were involved before, ever. I'm telling you, these are losers. These are political losers. Right.
I mean, if you look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I mean, now they're calling, Stephen Breyer made the statement within the last couple of months. He said it's not a really good idea to pack the court. Okay. And what is AOC? We haven't mentioned her in months. I'm surprised.
Oh, she makes me itch.
She makes me itch too. Talk about Ajita. AOC said she was questioned by a reporter on Friendly Media, of course, and said, well, what do you think? You think Justice Stephen Breyer should resign?
I saw that.
Okay. And she said, well, she waffled a little bit, and then she said, yeah, I guess so. He should resign.
Well, she wants just a young liberal.
Well, she doesn't want a liberal. Okay.
She wants something.
She wants Ibram Kendi and people like that to be on the Supreme Court. She wants people from the Harvard Critical Legal Studies Department to be on the Supreme Court. And she wants them like fresh out of Harvard, like 23 years old, no resume, that just acts out of pure emotion to write rulings and opinions that she likes and her buddies on the left like, and have that person there for about 70 years. That's what AOC wants. Because what's to stop? Let's stay on it a second. Democrats are able to pack the court. And let's say they have a 7-6 majority and there's 13 liberal 13 justices, 7 of whom are liberal, 6 are supposedly conservative. Okay, what's to stop the Republicans from coming in? As you said, there's no more filibuster, and they turn around and say, well, we're going to put on another 2. Okay, because now we have a conservative president and a conservative Senate and House, or conservative Senate, and we're going to put on another 2. Now it's 15. What's to stop them from doing that? Nothing. What's to stop them from coming in and say, you know what, we're undoing that, and those additional 4 that were put on, you're going to be taken off the court. What's to stop them from doing that? Nothing. Nothing. That's the wild, wild west chaos that the left has created in this country. They would like nothing more than that, by the way, because you know what it does? It destroys the institution. And remember something, at the end of the day, all you good people out there on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, ultimately, if they get what they want and they have more liberals than conservatives, okay, then they'd be happy with that. If they destroy the institution, well, that ultimately is their goal anyway, because they don't value the institution of the Supreme Court.
But the funny thing about that is if they destroy the institution, they get destroyed. You see, this is the part that is short-sighted. Do you realize that if America collapses, what that will mean to the world? Do you realize that? Do you think the only people that'll be insulated are people that are uber rich? It does uber rich. Everyone else gets destroyed because that's how it is in a lot of countries. I'm telling you this. That's how it is in South America. The country is a basket case. Those countries are political basket cases. The rich are insulated, and 85% of the population is basically eating dirt. That's what will happen. It won't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. It'll matter if you're uber rich or not, and it'll affect everyone. Like, this is where, like, people who want these, like, you get the radical Bernie Sanders, and by the way, 35% of the Democratic Party backed Bernie Sanders. Oh my gosh, I don't want to live in that country.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm not interested in that country. I got news for you. Some of the kids that are supporting that, they're not going to want to live in it either.
No, yeah, they can claim to all they want.
Once it happens, believe me.
And there's always that segment of the Bernie Sanders supporters that nobody ever sheds light on. Those Bernie Sanders supporters that voted for Donald Trump. But you don't hear it. Now, it's not a majority by any stretch, but there's a decent percentage of Bernie Sanders supporters who did vote for who did not vote for Joe Biden, and who did vote for Donald Trump. But you'll never hear from them. I suppose that they're the more sane types. The others are the BLMs and the Antifas, okay, who are the real enemies of the American people, along with the media, the Jake Tappers and the Brian Stelters and the Joy Reids and the rest of them, okay? But you'll never hear about that. But at the end of the day, Joe's right, okay? I don't want what Mark Robinson said, going back to our first segment, I don't want your socialist hellhole. Because remember something, there's been a number of people that have commented on this, especially given the atrocities of the 20th century, okay? The goal of the totalitarian regimes, because they're all anti-God, no matter what the atheists try to claim or the secular humanists try to claim, okay? The Stalins, the Hitlers, the Maos, those are your people. They're not religious people. You'll hear that all the time, Joe Resinello. No, they were religious in nature. No, they're not. They're atheists, like you, okay? And they believe that human life is cheap or valueless, like you do, okay? So they're your people. But what have they tried to do? And Joe, what were they successful at doing? When you look at the death camps that the Nazis set up in Poland, when you look at the concentration camps that Stalin set up in the Gulag, when you look at, let's say, the death camps and the concentration camps in China, what did they in effect do? That's why when you call socialists, when you describe this, what Biden and the rest of them are looking for as a socialist hellhole, what they've done is they nearly created hell on earth. If you want to see as close as you can in human history, a version of hell, just take a look at the 20th century. And who brought it to us? Who brought it to political leftists and atheists? That's who brought us that hell on earth. That's why Mark Robinson is right. We don't want your socialist hellhole, because that's what you want to go live in a hellhole. Don't want it for you. I'll pray for you. I pray for you every day. And all you people out there, I pray for the conversion of all people every day. But if you want to live in a hellhole, you go live in it. Don't bring us in there with you, because we ain't going in. Not without a fight.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. Okay? I don't want your universal basic income. I don't want your automation. I don't want your top-down economics from the government. I don't want any of it. None of it. Joe and I want none of it. We don't want your top-down education. Okay? We want local control of education. We want none of it. We don't want your socialist hellhole. You could keep it. Where are we going? Well, real quick. We're actually going to go to a break. But you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we're in the breach, and I'm angry. But I haven't gotten too angry lately, but I'm angry tonight, at least a little bit. I can find, see, unlike the left, though, I can get angry with a smile on my face. I could actually laugh while I'm angry. But you're at the front line, and we're on the Crusade Channel, always on air, and always online at crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing. You can join the chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please remember, listen free on the Crusade Channel. Go to the website, and you can listen to all of the content on Crusade Channel with the hope that you'll become a subscriber at the end of the day. Joe and I are all over social media. Wherever you find us, please like, subscribe, share, and help us out in that way. And we have Patreon if you want to drop in a couple of bucks. Patreon.com/The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Stick around. We got another hour. Welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We are way in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Please make sure to visit the website. Listen free. You hit that button, you listen for free.
Nice.
And we know damn well that at the end of it, you're probably going to want to become a Crusade Channel subscriber. That's our hope. Mike Church, the King Dude, he runs a great, great station. A lot of information, not just from him, not just from Joe and Joe, but also Rick Barrett and the whole lineup, brother Andre Marie, Kennedy Hall. So we really encourage you to subscribe to the Crusade Channel. And as I said, you can listen for free. Let's leave aside other promos. Let's jump right back in, because what we said earlier is the left and the media and Hollywood would have you believe that there is cultural hegemony in America, that Gramsci and his followers, his apostles that came after him, that they were actually successful. We don't believe that. I don't believe that the majority of the American people believe that marriage could be between two people of the same sex. And we don't believe that Americans are all for gung-ho for abortion and have this passionate intensity to kill babies. We don't believe that. We believe we're being told that, okay, through the media and Hollywood and everything else. But we don't believe that. We want to know what? We got some numbers. We got some numbers recently that back that up, that the majority of Americans, they're not buying this stuff on abortion. Even though they've told us for 50 years that the American people buy it. No, they don't. Joe Resinello's got something to say about that.
And this is also an overplay. We're going to get into that a little bit. You're overplaying your hand once again. Susan Berry reports that a national poll released by the Susan B. Anthony list found that a majority of likely voters support restrictions on abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy and are more likely to back a Republican candidate who support the limit as opposed to a Democratic candidate who want unrestricted abortion. Pay attention, people. This is big, if you ask me. The survey of 1,200 likely voters was conducted by On Message Inc. and found that 53% of likely voters said that they are more likely to vote for a Republican candidate who supports a 15-week limit on abortion compared to 28% who would rather vote for a Democrat who backs unlimited abortion up until the time of birth.
Repeat that. Repeat those are 50
to 28.
53 to 28.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because your position is unpalatable. Listen to me. Even indifferent people, even a-religious people, normal, civil people are not for third trimester abortion. Do you know that the state of Oregon, this happened this week, do you know that there was a bill that banned basically infanticide? What do I mean by that? That if a child survives abortion, the bill said you had to protect that child's life. And they voted that down.
Right.
That's not palatable. to people.
Because even indifferent people could see a dying baby on a table.
They're just kind of like, I can't buy that.
Right.
I'm sorry, I can't support that.
I'm changing my view a little bit. Not my view of abortion. I will always be, and Joe will always be, abortion abolitionists. It's like slavery. It's like any other evil. In fact, Joe and I have argued, I think, very, very convincingly on the front line with Joe and Joe, why it's the greatest evil that's ever been perpetrated in the history of mankind. Okay? If for no other reason, the innocence of the victim. You talk about justice and injustice, okay? That person who is deserving of his or her own life, injustice, who's done nothing wrong, okay, is being killed. So we think it's the greatest atrocity. Having said that, my view is that unfortunately, we have to take politically in America what we could get. And right now, we're going to continue to fight. We don't care if one baby's at risk of being killed. We are Roman Catholics. We are going to fight against that one baby being killed. But on a practical, political level, if we could get an abortion ban after 15 weeks, then we could regroup from there and then work on legislation from there. Now, again, some people may disagree with me on that, but honestly, overturning Roe versus Wade and having these states, a majority of states, impose 15-week abortion bans, okay, would be a good first step so that we can continue to fight from there. But also, and even Hearst Singh in New Jersey, he did not win. Unfortunately, we got another rhino Republican in New Jersey, Jack Ciattarelli. He's going to run for governor, and he's going to do nothing. Even if the people in New Jersey vote for him, he's going to do nothing to change Murphy's recent abortion atrocity, which mirrors what Cuomo did last year in New York. Okay, but here's the thing: this poll is showing that if a politician gets out there and says, look, we're realists. We understand that right now American people seem, I don't know why, to value this right to an abortion. But like you said, Joe Resinello, they're opposed after 15 weeks and have an abortion ban there. The enthusiasm for that is to have that happen. And there's a lack of enthusiasm on the other side. But
I want to talk about this. It's independents. Let's hear what the independents had to say. Basically, they're 54 to 18%. You see, you overplayed your hand.
You always call it a loser.
It's a loser. This is a loser. And I'm not saying, again, right and wrong. I'm talking about this politically.
Yes.
This is a loser. You've pushed it too far. It got too disgusting. Do you know, I've said this on many shows, I'll say it again. America is one of 7 countries in the world that permits third trimester abortion. And we're not in good company. This is disgusting.
Right.
This is disgusting. It's off the hook. It's all because of casual sex. And I'm telling you this right now. I have no confidence that the country will overturn Roe. This is my opinion. But God will. Because it's an atrocity.
Well, when God acts, you're not going to get Roe versus Wade overturned. You're going to have this country get its collective head out of its collective butt and ban this atrocity. When God acts. Okay? And I agree with you. I do think there is a possibility that Roe will get overturned. I think because when you see news like this, when you see kind of like what would you like hard data as far as where people are at. Remember, politicians, unfortunately, Joe, they're going to go where the polls lead for the most part. A lot of politicians will look at this as, all right, well, I could get out there and say I'm pro-life. I don't have to get out there and please Joe and Joe in the Catholic Church and say, well, ban abortions. All I got to do is say we're going to restrict abortion after 15 weeks. And guess what? According to this poll, all right, and others, okay, there have been others, we're highlighting this one, that person would stand a very good chance of getting elected. I mean, aside from it, there are other positions which would have to, but on that issue, they would be politically on safe ground.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. I mean, people would go crazy if this passes, and it just may, actually, because we have that case that's up in the Supreme Court right now. Was it Dobbs versus Jackson?
Jackson Women's Health Organization, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization,
and that's in the court right now.
And that's going to be
they're about to hear on that,
and that's going to be a challenge to Roe versus Wade. That's a direct challenge to Roe versus Wade.
But I'll tell you this, and this is why I don't think it'll ever happen, because the court, frankly, doesn't have any balls. Pardon my French, but that will cause you've never seen violence ever until that happens. You think the Civil War was violent? If they outlawed abortion, because it's basically about casual sex. We've said this time and time again. This is how people live their life. They have sex outside of marriage. They have sex, to be honest with you, there are married couples that have abortions. It's selfishness. It's about casual sex. You're talking about changing the culture. It's not about the baby. The baby has nothing to do with it. You're talking about a behavioral change. That's why no court or legislation, because you can't legislate morality. You can't. No matter what just like you can't legislate equality. This is what these woke people are trying to do. It doesn't work that way. Now, how you legislate, quote unquote, legislate morality and equality? Through religion. You see, religion. We just interviewed a gentleman talking about Hollywood, John Rizzo. One of the points he made in it, he said, I was educated by the Sisters of Charity in Jersey City, and they taught me about how to treat people. You see, that's taught through religion in your family. If you don't get that there, you're not getting it. I say this at my dinner table all the time to my wife. There's certain things when we talk about work. There's certain things you learn by the age of 5. If you don't grasp them by the age of 5, you're never going to. And that's learned in your house. It's learned through your church. And that's why that's important, the family and God. But you don't want to do that. You're going to try to legislate equality and morality. Guess what? Civilizations have tried to do that, and they all failed, and you will fail too. You don't learn. You're supposed to be so smart. Well, you're stupid. You don't learn. It's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But getting back to this whole situation, it's a loser.
Yeah.
And frankly, once again, the left always overplays their hand. They overplayed it again.
Well, I like the comment that they made on the poll itself, and they said they noted that the survey showed, quote, a strong center-right coalition that supports the Supreme Court allowing significant limits on abortion. They said, in short, a strong majority of voters oppose unrestricted abortion on demand throughout pregnancy. Additionally, the study strongly indicates that the pro-life side of the issue enjoys significantly more intensity than the pro-life side, than the pro-choice side. Again, that's important. We have friends of ours, okay, that protest down at Planned Parenthood, and this past Saturday, they were down in Brooklyn, okay? They usually protest down in Lower Manhattan. They went to Brooklyn, and they were met with Pro-Choice New York. Now, I've encountered those people when I've been down there with them. They're vicious, okay? They're very, very vicious people. They get in your face. The cops do a little, but they don't do much to separate them. They try to be intimidating. I've said on this show before on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online, at crusadechannel.com, they're punks. They're punks. If I would have to go to confession for a year if I punched one of these woke little snowflakes in the face, okay, it would be, and I'm not a tough guy. I'm not. I don't pretend I'm not. But if I hit one of these kids, no, it would be like assault. It's like they would melt. The problem with them, I would argue, just as another point, I would argue a lot, especially these young boys, all right, that show up at these places, these young men, okay, they've never been backslapped by their parents, which maybe they should have been. See, I was, and I was still a hooligan, all right, but because my mother and father once in a while gave me a nice, firm backhand, guess what? I learned the idea of consequences. Nobody punches these kids in the face, and we're not advocating for that, okay? But they're all talk, they're all bluster, they get in people's faces, okay? And you would think the way the media portrays them, and this is my larger point, that all the intensity is on their side. You would think that if you saw a video of how the Catholic prayer warriors, actually how they act, when this situation occurs with Pro-Choice New York, you'd see the juxtaposition. You see shrillness and screechiness and all this intensity, and they're screaming, they're yelling, they're mocking, they're spitting on one side. And what are the prayer warriors doing? On their knees, on the sidewalk, praying the rosary. Now, to me, praying the rosary is intense, particularly in front of an abortion clinic. But to the outside observer, they might think the intensity is on the other side. That's not the case. And this poll is showing that. And Joe's right, by the way. We need to emphasize to the American people, even people who are nominally pro-choice, let's say people who do agree with abortion restrictions, but still think there should be some right to abortion, we should still emphasize to them, well, then you need to do something about that because we are one of only 7 countries in the world that allows this. And remind people like that, we're in bed with China and North Korea and Venezuela when it comes to things like that. So do you want to be in bed with them? That's the way we need to at least start making this argument to those people who are somewhat on the fence. I don't want to be in bed with China on anything, nor North Korea. And we need to emphasize that. The intensity is on our side.
But this was interesting too. Basically, on the same lines of conversation, the Federalists put this article out. They basically said that the left is threatening the justices with dire consequences if Roe is overruled. Specifically, Democrats are saying a ruling they don't like will lead them to pack the Supreme Court. And this is just a comment. This is from Willis Krumholtz and Robert Delahunty in the Federalist. This is what they said. Clearly, no longer does the left pretend to argue in a disciplined, legal manner. The language of raw power, bitter invective, and crude threats have become the vernacular of the contemporary left in addressing the justices.
Yep.
And then basically what he does is he basically cited what Chuck Schumer had to say on the steps of the Supreme Court. And this was about a year ago. This is what he had to say. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
Let me stop you there for a second, because there's a couple of points I want to make on that. Number one, the awful decision to protect babies from people like your murderer, Chuck Schumer. Okay, your decision to be a baby murderer—that's the awful decision. Number one. Number two, you have no clue what Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are going to do, nor do we, unfortunately. Okay, we thought John Roberts was going to be a conservative. Shame on us. That's number one. Number two, you threaten 2 Supreme Court justices, and we are the violent ones? Donald Trump incites violence, and you get up on the steps of the Supreme Court and you physically threaten 2 sitting Supreme Court justices, and we are the violent ones? We are the violent insurrectionists that want to overthrow the country when you just threatened 2 sitting members of the Supreme Court? And here's my larger point. Why did Ted Cruz and McConnell and Hawley and the rest of them, he should have been censured. He should have been kicked out of the United States Senate for that act. He should have been kicked out. No way they should have allowed. And Donald Trump was still president and the Republicans still had the Senate. Okay? They should have thrown him out. And they said, that is inexcusable. And they didn't do it.
What did he say? Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. That's how we talk.
Good. Hey, Chuck, guess what? I want to punch you in your face.
That's what happens in Brooklyn.
See what happens in Jersey when you want to kill babies? See, we want to punch you in the face. I don't care if you're 30 years older than me, you old decrepit man. Okay? I want to punch you in the face. You're lucky I'm Catholic. I won't punch you in the face. But if you said I threatened you, or you called me a white supremacist, which I'm sure you do, or if you called me a violent insurrectionist, which I'm sure you do, I'll say, cuz. Because that's what we say in North. Cuz, come on, cuz, I'm from Jersey. Come on, that's what we thought. I didn't mean to say I'd sucker you. All right, I didn't mean to say I'd sucker you. That's only a phrase. I didn't really mean I'd punch you in the face. See, it doesn't fly, Chuck. But you have the media on your side. You have academia on your side. You have Hollywood on your side. And that's why you get away with threatening 2 Supreme Court justices. That's why you got away with it. You're lucky that we're not violent. You're lucky that we're not. But it's people like you that promote violence, and people should point that out to him. If I ever saw Chuck Schumer, I would embarrass myself, probably go to jail, but I would try to embarrass myself and him. And I would say, you threatened 2 Supreme Court justices. You should be in jail, or you should not be in the Senate.
Well, it's funny. Here's the thing. The more radical they go, there's always a political pushback. Listen, like I said, because of Barack Obama, you got Donald Trump. Keep this in mind. This is to be honest with you, it's a rule. It's absolutely happens time and time again. They had Jimmy Carter. Who did you get next? Ronald Reagan. You had Barack Obama. You got Donald Trump. Guess what? There's going to be a reaction to this nonsense. You're not going to like it.
No.
I'm telling you this right now. You're not going to like it.
Our friend Kat is in the chat room. She said, I struggle so much with anger. Don't get me wrong. I understand. She says, ooh, we can't get violent. God is in charge. Kat, come on. I'm not advocating violence. But making a larger point, we can't allow them to speak violently or advocate violence, and then they get away with it. And again, this goes back to big tech and censorship and everything we're saying. If we're allowed to say in the public square, and pressure Republican senators to at the very least severely censure Chuck Schumer, or have him thrown out of the Senate. Because guess what? If Joe and I went in the middle of Times Square, okay, and we got on a bullhorn, and we say, Sotomayor, Kagan, Breyer, you have reaped the whirlwind.
Oh, forget it.
We would be arrested, and I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. We would be arrested for threatening a public official. We would be arrested for it. How does a senator get away with that? How does a sitting senator get away with that? Because Republicans allowed him to get away with that. They should have embarrassed him. They should have taken his words. Everybody in social media should have broadcast his words so everybody knows, and then the Republicans should have acted on it. We have to take a break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And we're angry, Kat. We're angry, Kat, but we're not punching anybody in the face. So stick around. We got another segment left, but we would emphasize, please, subscriber push at the Crusade channel. Go on crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, and you're going to have access to all of the station's content. And we're convinced at the end of it, you're going to want to be a subscriber. So stick around. We got one more segment, and it's sure to be entertaining. Welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we're way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. So let's get right into it. But I do want to say that this is an interesting article, and we would recommend anybody look it up. But like Joe said, Willis Krumholz and Robert Delahunty in the Federalist. But it's important because here's the thing, too. Joe mentioned the point that if there was a 15-week abortion restriction, okay, the left is going to go nuts. But here's one thing, okay, and I think this is a point that we don't have time to get into today, but it's an important conversation, okay? Somebody explain to me, all right, whether you hear us on the Crusade channel or anywhere, okay? Somebody explain to me the reason why I should vote for any conservative, quote-unquote, pro-life Republican who's going to nominate, quote-unquote, conservative pro-life justices. If in this Mississippi case, Dobbs, if in the Dobbs case, they don't overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, what would you expect my reaction to be? Again, we're not going to react violently. We're not radical leftists. We're not Black Lives Matter. We're not pro-choice New York. We're not Planned Parenthood. We're not Antifa. We're not burning down buildings. We're not punching people in the face. That's not us. We'll never be that. We'll never be those guys. But what would you expect of us? You're a conservative Republican coming after my vote, and you say, I'm going to nominate conservative Supreme Court justice. I'm going to say, so what? You had the opportunity. This is the only case. This is the only case. This is the reason we vote for you, okay, when it comes to the Supreme Court. We want Roe versus Wade overturned. So at the very least, if abortion is going to be legal in America, state and local governments have the right to tell Planned Parenthood to kick rocks. And they row to kick rocks and get out, okay? At the very least, we want that. We want power over our own cities. They're sanctuary cities. Lubbock, Texas, is now the largest city in America that has become a sanctuary city. Okay, there's about 30 sanctuary cities. You have states like Missouri that do not have one abortion clinic, not one.
Amen.
Okay, we want to be able to fight on our local turf, and to do that, we need Roe versus Wade overturned. Okay. And if you don't give that to us, what do you expect our reaction is going to be? I think that's an important question, Joe Resinello.
Too many people are feckless about it because they're having casual sex too, and that goes on the Republican side of the house. I always say it's about casual sex. You can't legislate morality. You cannot legislate morality.
But then how do they expect to come for our vote, Joe?
Well,
how are they going to get our vote? If they come along and say, well, we're against abortion and we're going to nominate
people have to call them out. But also, listen, we were talking again. We just did an interview talking about the production code in Hollywood. People have to be honest with you, not enough people care about it. They don't. And like a lot of people, what they'll say is they know it's horrible, but it doesn't affect them and they go on with their life. You see, that's the sin, and that's why God's going to step in. Trust me when I tell you this. People think God is like a pansy. I'm telling you this right now. When God steps in, and he has stepped in what's it called? History. He stepped in Mexico through Our Lady. When God steps in, I'm telling you, it's a whirlwind.
That's the real whirlwind.
And he will, because it's disgusting.
And remember what was going on, just to stay on Guadalupe for a second. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Human sacrifice.
Human sacrifice.
Watch the movie Apocalypto.
Right. And you'll see it firsthand. Mel Gibson's spot on. That culture was corrupt from the inside. Okay. And even though it's kind of it's a fictitious civilization, but basically it's based on the Aztecs or the Mayans. But the bottom line is, okay, they were committing human sacrifice in there. The Spanish got there. The Jesuits were not having the greatest time converting the indigenous people. And it took an act of God. And what did God do? He sent Our Lady. And Our Lady went to Juan Diego. And you know what happened within 10 years? Within 10 years.
9 million people converted to the Catholic Church.
And you know what ended? Human sacrifice. Now, did God act violently like he did when the people of Sodom and Gomorrah wouldn't listen? No. Okay. Didn't send the flood? No. All right. He sent Our Lady. The message got through. And what happened? The country converted and human sacrifice came to an end. And that same thing, I would bet, you're right.
Something will happen.
We still should all fight.
Of course.
We still should all fight. We're always going to fight. But ultimately, like Joe is always saying on the show, okay, at the front line with Joe and Joe, when God acts, it's really going to change. It's really, and it will be dramatic.
And there's no question. There's no question. Atrocities, like I said, enjoy your hour. Even like take Germany. Look at the atrocity that they committed against our Jewish brothers and sisters. They thought that was going to be successful, right? Was it? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And this won't be either. This is an atrocity, and it will end. And believe me, if the Supreme Court doesn't want to end it, God will. There's no doubt in my mind. We have to do our part, though. That's what Joe's basically saying. You do your part by voting. You do your part by making your voice heard. You could go pray the rosary in front of abortion clinics. You could support grassroots organizations like Austin Ruse's organization, CFAM, really good organization. We've spoken with Austin a number of times on our show. You could speak with support Father Stephen Imperato. He just did a men's march in D.C.
Got shut down by the Biden administration. They shut down the park. They had to divert it, from what I understand. They did 5 minutes. This is information that's a little sketchy, but the crux of it is the quick article I read. They shut it down 5 minutes before they were to go into the park. They weren't allowed to go into the park. They had to divert their route. They still carried on. And Father Imperato was there, and a lot of good people were there. Okay, and a lot of good men. There was a men's march, but the devout Catholic, according to Jen Psaki, he shut down Catholic men from exercising their right to free speech.
But again,
disgraziado.
You're overplaying your hand, and you are going to lose.
I will say this, though. Joe's right. And we always pray to God, okay? Ultimately, we have to be in the fight, okay? And God's going to hold us accountable, too. Even though, God knows that God could change this situation like that. But it's like we always say on the show, what are you prepared to do? See, I think God asks that question. Okay, what are you prepared to do? I'll give you a good, I thought was a particularly good insight from Crumholz and Dillahunty, and then we'll move on because we only have a few minutes left. He said, what should officials do if the Supreme Court blinks? Okay, now this is where I think they're watching the front line with Joe and Joe. Okay, state legislatures must draft and enact laws that will command popular support. We just did a segment. The popular support, at least for severe restrictions on abortion, is on the pro-life side, not on the pro-death side, okay? Regardless of the fate of the Mississippi law in the court. On select issues with popular moral and voter appeal, such as Down syndrome abortion ban, Joe and I have talked about that before, brave governors in the mold of Abraham Lincoln should be ready to defy the courts. Defy them. Tell them we don't care. State legislature goes into its state and says to Planned Parenthood, get out. What are you going to do? You have to say, are you prepared to go to war over abortion? Are you prepared to fight a civil war over abortion? Is the federal government willing to send in the National Guard to keep the Planned Parenthood open? Are you prepared to do that?
I'll be honest with you. I actually think if it got overturned, they are prepared. This because this attacks people at the heart. Casual sex. Casual sex. If you, I'm going to be honest with you, there's no way that people will take this sitting down. Joe, they won't do it. I'm just telling you, that's my opinion. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think that's Republicans too. They have casual sex too. Don't think they don't. Most people don't care. Listen, ultimately, we're all going to die. I got news for you. And here's another thing. If you're Catholic and you're supporting this, I'll be truthfully, I don't understand you. I'll be honest with you. I really don't understand you. I try to. I can't understand you. Because ultimately, listen, I get we all have priorities, but I've said this many, many times. Certain things are disqualifiers. They're disqualifiers. Like, for instance, if you were for slavery, you're out. I'm not voting for you. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Catholic. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care what you are. You call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. I'm not voting for you.
Right.
Well, same thing with abortion. I'm not voting for you.
Right.
And I don't get it, but that's not me. That's your business. But ultimately, it's gone too far. Frankly, there's going to be an adjustment. And frankly, all this stuff is not going to last long.
Let's pray. Let's.
No, I'm talking about the woke crap. Like it's
all of it's got to look. It all has its inception, as Father Karapi used to say. It all's got its inception in the same place, in the same pit of hell. So when you're talking about abortion, you're talking about telling boys it could be girls and girls it could be boys. When you try to convince people that having sex with someone of the same sex is A-okay in God's eyes, when you do these things, these ideas have their inception in one place: hell, because the devil wants to drag you there. That's the bottom line. Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and we're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We're way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. So we have time for one more segment. You know, we had a conversation with Austin Roos recently, and that's going to be broadcast on the Veritas Catholic Network probably over the next couple of weeks. Austin does phenomenal work. What's his colleague's name? Stefano.
I can't recall. He's an Italian lawyer that works with him at the UN.
At the UN, all right, at CFAM, and they're fighting to prevent what they're pushing at the UN, which is an international right to abortion. And Austin, we love having him on the show. We spoke to him a couple of times on the Crusade channel. We had a conversation with him on the Crusade channel also a few months ago. Austin made a good point. And I never knew this. Okay, so a lot of people know that a lot of Americans always, and a lot of conservative Americans always refer to Alexis de Tocqueville. Okay, and his great work, Democracy in America. He basically came to America and he wrote a book and he commented on what he saw and described as democracy in America. Now, Austin made a point that I did not know. Okay, is that de Tocqueville said that America will go in one of two directions: either pantheism or Catholicism. That's a pretty interesting statement. I never knew he said that. I never read Democracy.
Tell everyone what pantheism is.
Well, pantheism basically is what it suggests: a pantheon of gods. The pantheon in Greece is a pantheon to the gods. Okay, there's many gods, and in America, that's what we're all taught. All roads lead to God. You could be a Muslim, you could be a Jew. No theology is better or more truthful than another. You could be an atheist.
That bumper sticker, you ever see that?
Yeah, the bumper sticker coexists with all the religious symbols on it. That's pantheism. There's many gods, and whichever one you choose to follow is fine. Just be a good person, whatever that means. Okay. And you'll be just fine in God's eyes. That's pantheism. And I think that you can make an argument that's what we live in right now. Nobody's going to suggest America is even a Christian nation anymore. Okay. Even if it was a Protestant nation from its founding, it's not even that anymore. Okay. So de Tocqueville is basically saying it's going to go one way or the other. Now we're living in, I think, the pantheist phase, but there's a recent article that we saw by Paul Krauss that suggests that the future of America is going to be saved by Catholicism. And perhaps de Tocqueville was prophetic. Joe Resinello's got something to say about that.
This is what he said. He said, because Catholicism understands that humans are cultural animals and that we have a rich and splendid cultural inheritance rather than proclaiming an orphaned inheritance or advancing an ideology of self-hatred and cultural destruction in the name of progress. Catholicism not only has a 2 millennia living tradition offering a rich inheritance, but it also has a rich future. We belong to something ancient, but also something that's growing into the future. Keep this in mind. And this is the mistake of, if you ask me, secular humanists. Holy people have insight. I'm telling you this right now. They do. Holy people have insight. That's why they call them prophets. They see things that you don't, and they don't even have to be as smart as you. And I'm going to give you a for instance. Bishop George, Cardinal George, rather, of Chicago. This is what he had to say. And don't necessarily take his word in the order that he said it. He said this: I will die in my bed. The cardinal after me will die in jail. The one after him will be killed, and the next one will rebuild society from its ashes. That's the direction it's going. It's going in that direction. By the way, society at large went in that direction already.
Oh, yeah.
It already happened. Rome fell. You had the Dark Ages. 90% of the people were illiterate for like 1,000 years. And who maintained culture in Europe?
Catholic Church.
Absolutely. That's unrefutable.
Yeah.
That's unrefutable.
I know the atheists don't like when we talk that way, but there wouldn't even be a Western civilization if it wasn't for the Catholic Church.
So my point of the matter is, and I'll use another person. You could actually Google this. 1969. Before he became the Pope, Joseph Ratzinger, Cardinal from Germany, said this. He said, the Catholic Church, he said this over 50 years ago, will grow smaller, it will grow poorer, it will lose its influence, but it will grow stronger. And as society darkens, the people in that darkness will look to the remnant, and from it, a new church will spring. Not a new church as in the church will change. The church will grow again.
Right.
It's a fact.
Well,
it's going to happen.
Well, the church, unfortunately, has been infiltrated over the ages. Look, the church, we've said the same thing all the time. Nobody's got an excuse to leave the Catholic Church because of corruption. Joe and I are tired of hearing, well, the church is so corrupt. Well, no, it's no more corrupt now than it was when Jesus was the head of the church and his 12 apostles were the 12 bishops and Judas betrayed him, okay? And the rest of them ran, Peter denied him, and the rest of them ran away, except for John, okay? Or John ran away but then went to the foot of the cross. Either way, however you look at it, problems with the hierarchy in the church have always been there. When the church is strong, meaning not big, I don't mean powerfully, politically strong. I'm talking about when the church is strong in the truth, when it does not waver, when it is in fact the rock that it was founded on, okay, of Peter, okay? When the church speaks with clarity, okay? I don't care if you're a church hater. I don't care if you're Protestant, okay? In America, the Catholic Church used to speak, and others, non-Catholics in America, wanted to wait to see what the Catholic Church would say. Look at an example of what I'm talking about. When the world was caving on contraception, okay, what did Paul VI do? All right, and they were trying to convince him, Theodore Hesburgh, okay, and people like that in the church were trying to convince him that the church had to move on contraception. He issued Humanae Vitae, which proclaimed the teaching of the church from before them, which is it's an artificial contraception is an intrinsic evil. Now, why do I bring this up? The power, the church will always have ebbs and flows, okay? We'll always have high times and low times. That's because of the men in the church, okay? The leadership of the church at times are weak. But when the church, regardless of its size, when the church is strong in truth, okay, the church is it's an unstoppable, it's unstoppable force.
Oh, that's a fact. But the church is strong in truth now. It's there. You see, people don't look in the right places. I'll point you to those places. I tell you this all the time. Go into any missionary of charity convent anywhere in the world. We just interviewed Michael Grogan. He's the blind prophet of Philadelphia. Wait till that interview comes out, people. Check it out in Veritas. Awesome interview. Gentleman works with people addicted to heroin on the street, and he's blind himself, legally, that is. Anyway, he says the same thing. I agree with him 100%. When you see Catholicism operating on all cylinders, your head spins. Your head will spin off your neck. And that's going on now. Their remnant is here. You just have to look and you have to find it. The sacraments are still the sacraments. But mark my words, and this article is spot on, it will be Catholicism that people look to. It's going nowhere. People who try to cancel this cancel culture crap, you're not a student of history. It's been tried and it has failed time and time again.
Listen, the writing with the Sharpies with the vaccination. What did they do to Jews in the ghetto? They slapped the yellow Star of David on them.
Did that work?
So that didn't work out.
That didn't work well either.
Okay, so this has always been tried. Okay, so the bottom line is it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You know, so they can concoct all these theories all they want. The point of this article and Paul Krause is that the church, like Joe said, I kind of misspoke. The church is always strong in the truth on a supernatural level.
No, I just wanted to be clear on it.
Right.
I know you know
church
that.
is indefectible. Okay, that's the bottom line. The problem is when the men in the church and they're in the hierarchy, but also the women in the church, okay, proclaim Catholic truth. Propose. I'm not defending anything. I'm offering what is true, good, and beautiful as a Roman Catholic, because that's what the Catholic Church possesses, the fullness of the truth. Okay, so we have to assert that and be strong. People think, like, you make a good point, Joe. All right, I'm gonna give you an example. Okay, personal example. I lived, and most people out there on the Crusade channel know this about me. I lived 20 years of my life as a very reckless person. Okay, always chasing after the quick thrill, whether it be women, whether it be alcohol, whatever the case might be. Okay, did not live a good life in that regard. Okay, and I might have been one of those people that wanted that casual sex that you're talking about. In fact, I was. Okay, contracepting and everything else. When I heard the truth, my life changed. And the only reason I heard the truth because I bothered to listen to the people that were telling me the truth. Now, back then it was Mother Angelica, it was Father Carapi, Father Mitch Pacwa, others, okay? And I listened. You know what? They weren't wishy-washy. They said it the way it was. And you know what? Even a hard-hearted person like me who just wanted to chase after superficial pleasure changed my life. Got married, and my life is not the same as it was at 53 as it was at 23, 33, and 40. Now, my point is, if the truth is proclaimed, people will listen. And I say that from personal example, because I know if they can get through to me, they get through to the culture at large.
And I would agree with Joe. It is important to speak the truth, but more importantly, it's important to live it. And that's what changed me. You have to see it. When you see it, and believe me, speaking the truth is important. Trust me. It should be spoken from the pulpit. It should be spoken in the home, and it should be spoken in the public square. It's more important to live it. You know, Joe mentioned that abortion rally that took place in Brooklyn. There's a picture. You could check it out on social media. It's on our social media, of a priest, Father Fidelis, basically standing there peacefully as a man is blowing smoke in his face. It reeks of Christ. It reeks. It's so Christ-like how he endures the slap of raw evil and violence. That's powerful. That is the power of Catholicism. And I want to just end it with Paul Krause. This is what he had to say. He said, shepherding the next generation and nurturing the future of culture will be no easy task, but it is the task that Catholics are best equipped to undertake. Our souls, our culture need the courage and sacrifice demanded of this heroic undertaking. The truly new evangelization begins and ends with Catholics. It always has, and it always will.
Let's leave it there, Joe Rossinello. We can go on with that one, but we are out of time here on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Please make sure we're doing a subscriber push. So go on crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, listen to Mike Church, listen to the Frontline with Joe and Joe, listen to Rick Barrett, listen to Brother Andre Marie Kennedy Hall, and the whole lineup. We're convinced you're going to want to become a subscriber. Wherever you see Joe and I on social media, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and all across. Do what you can to help us. Like a video, subscribe, share with your friends, whatever you can. We really appreciate it. Always keep us in your prayers. And if you want to contribute financially, we have our Patreon page, patreon.com/The Frontline with Joe and Joe. And finally, we are on the Veritas Catholic Network, okay? 1350 on your AM dial, serving the New York metropolitan area. And you could download the mobile app so you can have access to all of the station's content. Joe and I have an interview show on Sunday afternoons at 5 o'clock with some great people coming up on the show. And once again, as always, God bless you. Thank you all for supporting us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. And remember, until we speak again, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening.